Welcome to today's greenhouse chat. Today we are diving into the top early blooming flowers that you can add to your winter garden. That's right, we can add some vibrant color to our late winter / early spring gardens, and I will talk about some ways that you can safely plant in the garden right now. Hi you guys, this is Nicole from My Carolina Garden. My garden is in growing zone 8B and I am in southeastern North Carolina. So because I garden in zone 8B, the bulk of what I want to talk about is really guidelines for around zone 8 gardening, because that's what I do. That's where my experience is. So think about that kind of thing if you are in a different growing zone. We just want to maybe make some adjustments here and there to some of the things that you can safely do and some of the things that you should probably steer clear of right now while it's still winter. Let's start off by talking about some examples of early bloomers. So these are things that are going to be adding some color to the garden while the garden is barely waking up. The first one is Hellebores, or the Lenten rose. So if you're familiar with those, which a lot of people are because a lot of gardeners talk about Hellebores during this time of year, but that's because they bring beautiful color and interesting design to our winter gardens. Now, I want to start off by saying, you know that I'm into budget gardening. Hellebores can be a bit pricey. So if you're not willing to invest a little bit of money to make your winter garden shine, perhaps this is one to skip over. That's just a little side note. So Hellebores are hardy in zones 4 through 9. They bloom from late winter into early spring with, oh my gosh, gorgeous shades of pink, of white, of green. They thrive in partial shade and are a fantastic way to add just a little more interest into that winter garden, especially at a time when we're craving it, when we want winter to be over and spring to be fully here. Snowdrops are my second example, and they are hardy zones 3 through 8. These little groupings of white flowers can be blooming right through the snow. So talk about that beauty of the delicate winter snow that you get. All right, I'm over the winter snow right now, but something that can just bloom and emerge right through it. Snowdrops could be the flower for you. They're like tiny little beacons of hope saying spring is coming. So think about that one. A crocus. Crocus are the teeny little plants. You watch them emerge and you're just like, okay, spring is really coming once again. These guys come in some cheery colors. So we have purple, yellow, and white crocuses. Crocuses are hardy zones 3 through 8. So a lot of us get to enjoy them, which is super cool. They just give us those little tiny hints of spring that we love to keep us going and get us excited for the upcoming growing season. And what's cool about crocuses is they can start blooming as early as February. Great timing, right? Daffodils have a hardiness zone of 3 through 9. So you can plant your daffodils out in bulbs earlier in the year before now, just to get them ready to emerge. What's cool about daffodils is they come in like yellows and whites, and you can put them into groupings and clusters. Daffodils are super cool, very pretty, because they have the little interesting shaped center and then the rays that pop out like a sunshine. And daffodils are likely to come out in March and April. Camellias, their hardiness zone is 6 to 9. They're an evergreen shrub, but they are a cold weather bloomer, which is super nice. You can get different varieties of camellias. Some of them would be fall bloomers, some of them winter bloomers. So just check the tags and see what would be available for you. But talk about adding in some like bright pops of pink or red or even white to toss out into the wintry, chilly landscape. Camellias are also not an inexpensive plant to buy. If your budget is okay with spending a little bit of money on a camellia, then I would highly recommend that. I have 2 of them myself, and they do add pops of color when there is just no other color around. Muscari, that is a flower that is hardy zones 3 through 9, and it can also be popping out in February. So again, that super duper early interest color with the Muscari, or also can be called grape hyacinth. It can be perfect as a versatile plant. You can pop it in between rocks in your rock garden. It can start to fill out as a ground cover. So the Muscari is neat. I have purple in my garden, and you just, again, just like the crocus, you're like, hi, spring is coming. It's okay. I've waited a long time through the cold winter, but it's coming now. Okay, so those are plants that don't mind the chill of winter, but can we safely plant when it is still winter? So two different things. These plants, they like the chill. Can we add more? What's up with that? The answer is yes, we can plant in winter, but we have to take certain precautions. So let's just pay attention to certain things, like ensure that your soil isn't frozen or waterlogged. Frozen soil actually prevents roots from establishing, and overly wet or soggy soil can cause the plants to rot. These are not things that we want. We are looking to add things to beautify and increase our landscape, so make sure you pay attention to your soil before you put something in there. One tip you can think of is just work in your garden on more mild days. So this way you can move the soil around and it's much easier to work with. Another thing that we have talked about before is mulching your plants. So if you're going to add anything new into the landscape, put a nice little protective layer of mulch over top of the root system to keep that baby protected. So it can even be like ground up leaves or something like that, straw. Anything that can protect that root system, and also it's going to help the soil to maintain a more steady temperature. So mulching is definitely an important part of the planting process. Watering. You actually want to make sure that you water deeply anything that you plant newly into the ground. This is going to help the soil settle around the root system and make sure that there are no air pockets around there. And I know that watering in the winter does sound counterintuitive, but it is actually helpful to keep those roots protected from these crazy cold spells that we might get. So watering deeply when we plant, but don't overwater, because a plant doesn't need tons of water during the winter season. Even me in growing zone 8B, I am going to still have to keep watch for frost. Winter is not over yet, and my average last frost date is April 15th. So there's pretty good chances we're gonna get multiple frosts between now and April 15th. So if I'm going to be planting anything new, I am going to have to take special care to cover over those plants to protect them from frost damage. And you can buy frost blankets or something similar to cover over the top. So that is to protect the foliage, where the mulch is to protect the root system. So why can winter planting actually be beneficial? Early establishment is one benefit, and that is the root systems actually have time to grow and develop a bit before the warmer and more demanding growing season starts. Secondly, it could be less stress on your plants. Cooler temperatures and less sunlight is actually less stress on your plants. Garden centers often stock bare root plants or hardy varieties of plants that are safe for planting early in the season. We're going to talk in a little bit about some plants that are options for late winter planting / early spring planting, so we can get that color that we're after. So what are some plants that you can safely plant at this time of year? One thing is hardy perennials. So we have things like columbine, coreopsis, and even black-eyed Susans can be planted now to get those roots established before spring. Spring flowering bulbs. Again, we talked about daffodils and crocuses and even snowdrops. These are things that we can get in the ground early, and again, they appreciate those cooler temperatures. Then we have cold hardy annuals, things like pansies, things like decorative kale or cabbage, things like snapdragons. These guys can handle some light frost, so we're not as concerned about them, and they are considered annuals in a lot of places, so we're just putting them out there for this cool season color. Bare root trees and shrubs, some things like some fruit trees or some roses, those are ideal specimens to plant at this time of year because they're dormant and then they'll easily establish as time goes on. So there is a bit of a variety for us this time of year, even though we might not think that. There are plants to avoid, however. Tropical plants, for example, they don't like the cold and they are going to be very sensitive to it. Same deal, tender perennials, things that really don't appreciate frost or chilly temperatures. We want to make sure we're avoiding them. Here's an example for you. I went to Walmart just recently and I got these dahlia bulbs. They're called Tahiti Sunrise, and I got 2 packages of them. So I'm going to have some gorgeous colorful plants, but I am not going to be planting these guys out into my landscape until that April 15th date, or until your average frost date has passed, because they are tender. They are perennial in my area in zone 8, but I am right on the line of where they would be perennial. So I don't want to lose these plants right from the get-go. If I'm chomping at the bit and I feel really excited about planting something new, I could always pot up these bare roots to get them to give them an early start indoors. And then once that April 15th line passes, then I can plant them out into my landscape. But something that would be considered a tender perennial for you, or a tropical plant, don't put those out into the landscape right now. Even the seeds of heat-loving plants, don't start sowing them outside right now either, like zinnias or marigolds. Save that for when the soil and your climate actually warms up. But if you pop over to your garden centers, they are going to have a variety of things that could give you some instant winter color. Pansies, again, as we mentioned before, let's talk about pansies a little bit. Their hardiness zone is 6 through 10. They are grown as annuals, again, in colder climates. They are cold hardy, they are cheerful, and they come in many different colors. So you can plop pansies into so many different things. Containers, rock gardens, flower beds, use them as a border. It's awesome because they are so versatile, and again, they have a lot of different color varieties. So pansies are super cool. Primrose. Primroses are hardy zones 3 through 8. They are compact, they are bright, and they thrive in cooler weather. You can use primroses in shaded areas or in your beautiful containers. Ornamental kale and cabbage, as we said before, like zones 2 through 10 or something like that. So they're a cold hardy plant that gives you that really interesting foliage, beautiful little pops of color, and they love the cold weather. I've kept my decorative cabbage outside. I still have purple and green all on it. It did get a little bit of cold damage just from the craziness that just happened recently. But besides that, overall, my plant's looking awesome. And I actually, interestingly, got to keep my decorative cabbage from last winter, and it stayed alive for me all through the summer and everything. So versatile foliage and quite a versatile plant as well. Sweet alyssum is hardy in zones 5 through 9. So that little fragrant flower can be beautiful as a pot filler or in a border and edging. Just again, tiny clusters of beautiful and fragrant flowers. Sweet alyssum could be an answer for you. So I guess the bottom line here is, even though we just went through a cold spell, I know we are thinking about how to add color into our gardens. And of course, we are chomping and getting ready to have our hands in the dirt again. So if you're in zone 8 or somewhere similar, again, just kind of adjust based on where you are. Let's think about how we can add some of this color into our landscape. Maybe some of us can even just start with making potted arrangements that are kept a little bit more protected if you're in a colder area than I am. Think about things like that as well and make adjustments as you see fit. It's a fun time to start thinking about adding color into our garden though, because then we don't feel so deep in like the start of winter when all of our gardening tools are put away and we're figuring our plants and our gardens and everything's asleep anyway, and we have a long time to wait. This time is very different. Hopefully you found today's greenhouse chat to be inspiring and has got your mind thinking about ways you can add some color into your garden. Of course, we never forget other things that add winter interest like statuary or evergreen. So those types of things, put them into your plans or your garden designs for this upcoming year so that your winter garden is even more special next year just to start things off. Thanks for watching the greenhouse chat. If you have other ideas of things you'd like to talk about moving forward, please let me know, because that is exactly what this is all about. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already done so, just to make sure that my videos keep showing up in your feed. And until next time, you guys, happy planting.